Mechlogs, volume, whatever. I don't even care about this anymore. I don't get even why I do these logs. I can't keep track of any of them, never mind how many I've done. Recently, me and Tom from the Beast Quest Adjacent World have been trying to figure out where some of the new beasts popping up have come from, as he has been experiencing a massive number of new evil beasts, and even some good beasts popping up. But we wanted to see where we came from, so I used some of the more futuristic devices from my world to try and figure out the heritage and even bring back the ancestors of some of the beasts we were looking into. This first common ancestor I'll be logging, I gave Tom the pleasure of naming, and he decided to name it Cainite. It is a common ancestor of Luna, Lupix, Gulkian, Cajun, and Carnivora, 5 of the most powerful wolf beasts in Tom's world. Now, its abilities include wings it can use to fly, an extremely powerful jaw with an icy underbite that means it can freeze anything it's eating, and it's got quite powerful legs, allowing it to run at almost 100 miles per hour. It's definitely one of the most powerful beasts, and all the beasts in this video will be in the order of the ones we created them, so this was the first we created. At first, many failed experiments went into reviving the common ancestors, but eventually we did figure it out, and we were able to figure out how to bring back Cainite. And we've since put it in a sort of like biocenter of my world that me and a few of the people I used to work for work. I don't work there anymore, but I've got quite a few friends there, so they built a smaller biosphere for this thing so we can study it, see what its full extent of abilities are. We see it has venom in its mouth. We think it probably lost that in all of its descendants, but maybe, as far as we can tell from the scans we've run on it already, which isn't that many because me and Tom have spent most of our time working on the other common ancestors, it might even be a compound similar to liquid nitrogen that helps it in freezing its prey. However, unlike the others in this log, episode, whatever you want to call it, this one doesn't seem to have a clear closest ancestor. For example, the one we'll be covering after this one, which is Tritentic, their closest ancestor is clearly Scalamanx, but they're also related to others. This one doesn't seem to have a closest ancestor. We think it could be Gulkian, or we think it could be Cajun. However, we don't fully know. It has proto-wings on the sides of its arms that we believe its ancestor might have used for gliding. However, we still don't know why it has these fully, since if it has wings, why would it need to glide? So we also think these could have maybe been sharper and used for defending itself. It doesn't have that long a tail, unlike some of its ancestors. However, this isn't very big, as this is a smaller variable. Anyway, let's move on to the next ancestor in our logs. As we discussed in the previous case, the one we'll be talking about next I named Tritentic, and unusually for its appearance, it's actually the closest living ancestor of most octopus or squid-like beasts that Tom has faced. As said, its closest living relative is Salamance or Scalamanx, whatever you want to call it. This may seem odd since Salamance has fire abilities, and this seems like something that an ancestor that's this closely related to it would share. But as Tom explained to me, many beasts have more magic in their system than common animals, so it is possible their mutations could be more magically infused. Now, as said, this is the ancestor of most octopus-like beasts. They are the ancestor of Voltrex, Zephyr, Naga, Elko, Salamance, and Devora, the demon fish. This may seem like an odd connection, but we believe this thing lived in the swamp, and as sea levels were rising during the time period it took place in, some of its ancestors fled to the ocean, becoming Devora, or Naga, or some of the others. However, very few stayed on land, and then eventually went into water. The only one that fully stayed on land was Salamence. This is likely why Elko and even Voltrex have more land adaptations, even though they live in the water. They were the later ones to adapt to living in water than stuff like Devora and Zephyr. It has 4 eyes and a mouth inside of its own, and this is likely what caused it to adapt into some of the stranger beasts like Devora, which has a similar mouth, and it seems that its skull actually has a sort of ridge down the middle. Not a full gap, but a thinner part that lowers down into a bump. Now, this could be proof of why it would evolve into a 2-headed beast like Voltrex, or have its heads change shape almost entirely with stuff like Naga or Elko. From those of it that we have revived, we can see that it can scale from the size of a bear whilst it's young to almost 1.5 times that size when it grows older. And it has a large tail, which, from setting it up in simulated scenarios, we see is one of its main weapons. But we also see it moves quite erratically and fights very unpredictably. Another fact about this beast that we have yet to discover for the full extent of is that it is the closest living to our time period. The other two have obviously been extinct for hundreds of thousands of years. So has this one, but it is the one that went extinct most recently, likely simply because its environment was being destroyed. Studies also show from the simulated biosphere we've put in that it's actually not that aggressive of a beast, and it's actually quite docile unless threatened by something, not wanting to get into a fight. Though it's hard to say it isn't good in a fight, likely the most competent out of any in this log, as it's the one that had to evolve the most fighting skills for its habitat. Anyway, next we're going to move on to my personal favourite, Drowgong. Drowgong is one of the main reasons me and Tom started looking into it. It's the only one in this log that's actually the ancestor of any of the newbies that have been popping up. But most of them don't actually have ancestors, and they seem to be just appearing out of the blue. This isn't unheard of for beasts, but it's also quite rare. This one is the ancestor of Vedra and Crimin, Furno, Rocksnad, that's the one that me and Tom fought most recently, and Convol. Now you might be able to tell it is the ancestor of many dragon-like beasts, though the inclusion of Rocksnad and Convol certainly change that, suggesting that those two might have a further along common ancestor from this one that lost its wings in favour of a more terrestrial lifestyle. Now, this is the one we have the least intel on about their environment, as their fossils seem to be spread all over the globe. This isn't unusual, ocean levels rising, and with a beast that's able to fly, different migration patterns could just mean these beasts were all over the world and dying at separate times. Maybe because Tom's world, as we're figuring out from doing this, has suffered many more mass extinctions than most. However, they have calmed down recently, which is quite a relief. Now, the beast's frame is rather slender, though this isn't because it's malnourished, as all beasts in this family seem to have that, or share it. We believe this is because there might have been an ancestor to some of the other dragons, and this is a show of convergent evolution, where one is mimicking the other. We believe this one is making themselves look like that species, but slender, so that they're able to escape predators and predators won't hunt them as often. And also, this means they're able to move around faster in the air. It does also mean they're quite physically weak, though, unable to make quick turns or survive many hits, but they often didn't need to. They were quite aggressive creatures and very territorial, but they would always back off on the fight, and they were quite intelligent when it came to protecting their flock. Anyway, that's all we have for today's logs. I'll likely be doing more soon, simply due to the sheer number of beasts in Tom's world. So, I'll see you guys in the next log. I don't even know who I'm writing this to. Why am I even saying this?